Perspectives with Asima Silva. I'm Hank Stoltz, and today we are at the MetroWest Muslim Festival, and what a great time. Enjoying Good, which is an organization which Asima Silva founded, is one of the sponsors today, and we're going to have some guests who are stopping by. It's a wonderful, wonderful day here in Westboro, and our first guest is Adam Carroll from the UN and New York, and he is in charge of the programs for, well, we're going to let him talk a little bit about that, but some pretty heady stuff here. And Asima, maybe you could set the scene for us a little bit about what is happening today at the MetroWest Muslim Festival, and then we'll bring in Adam.
Sure. This is our first annual Enjoying Good MetroWest Muslim Festival today in Westboro. We're hoping for at least a few hundred, and that's our conservative estimate attending today. Filled with performances, food, ethnic bazaar, and we were honored when Adam Carroll, and we've had him before on the show, speaking about the Burma Rohingya situation. When he told me he was in the area, of course, we couldn't resist this opportunity to hear from him again, and so he could give us an update of what is actually still going on in Burma and the situation there. So thank you, Adam, for coming all the way here, taking your time away from Boston, and I'm sure Boston for you would have been great on such a wonderful day, but you're still so dedicated to this cause that you came out today just to do this interview so you can shed some more light on what the recent events are.
Well, thank you, Asima, and I'm glad to be here. I think that this is a important opportunity to spread the word. It's a depressing story. The human rights abuse and persecution is not a pleasant topic, and when it gets to the level of genocide, which it has, a lot of people turn off. They don't want to hear it, and Muslims around the world know that our community is under attack in many places. We have our own internal challenges, but with genocide, the U.S. government has only in recent years declared a genocide against the Yazidis. And in that case, it was ISIS that was creating the genocide against a non-Muslim minority. In this case, it's a Muslim minority that is suffering the genocide, and the U.S. government has yet to call it a genocide. So this is one of our priorities right now, is to get the U.S. government, Secretary of State Pompeo, to declare it a genocide, which should require a higher level of action by the government. We also, as a UN program director for Burma Task Force, I'm also paying attention to what's happening in the UN, and as we speak, it's the UN General Assembly Week, which is a very important time for the UN. Every year, the leaders come together. The General Assembly, which is all 194 nations, have their heads of state speak. Aung San Suu Kyi, the state counselor, the de facto leader of Burma, is not coming because she would be called on her terrible human rights record. She doesn't want to face the music, which would be very angry and disappointed music. Her reputation around the world has sunk so low because she's been complicit with the military in Burma. She has refused to criticize them, despite report after report after report. Most recently, last week, there was a new report, 444 pages, very in-depth study by the UN. It was a group of experts that were convened by the Human Rights Council in Geneva. They put together a very strong set of recommendations, including calling it a genocide, including an arms embargo, because some countries are still selling arms to this military that's killing Rohingya. They have other recommendations, targeted sanctions, and referral of this case to the International Criminal Court. Burma Task Force also very strongly supports referral to the ICC, the Criminal Court. One problem is that our own National Security Advisor, John Bolton, in the Trump administration, is against the ICC. The U.S. is not even a signer of the ICC. We use this argument about sovereignty to evade our responsibilities as a nation among nations. And this is what some of the other authoritarian nations do. This is what Burma does. But thank God most of the countries in the world have signed on to the Rome Statute and the International Criminal Court. The importance of referring the case means that these generals who are responsible for mass atrocities, throwing children into fire, mass rape, just you name it, so many mass graves, they will eventually come to trial under that system. It is possible that even though the UN Security Council is very reluctant to refer to the ICC because of China can veto anything in the Security Council. They just recently did find another way around that, which is because Bangladesh has been so impacted by this crisis, by the mass displacement, over 1 million Rohingya in Bangladesh now, that they have the standing and the credibility to bring this, and the legal standing to bring this case to the International Criminal Court. So this is something that we have a lot of hope in. It won't be for all the atrocities, it can only be related to the mass displacement. But so we are working all the angles. In Congress, sanctions legislation, Burma Task Force strongly supports comprehensive sanctions. U.S. just talks about targeted sanctions, is very reluctant to make them strong, and in fact all the sanctions bills are stuck. Mitch McConnell in the Senate has been blocking the Senate bill. Until that goes through, there will be no sanctions, except there is a chance that the State Department and perhaps the White House, if they choose, can put certain kinds of sanctions, Magnitsky Act sanctions, on the generals. This is how we work. We try to pressure the government of Burma. We try to pressure its friends. We try to impact its ability to kill other minority groups. I should say that in the last 6 months, Burma Task Force has reached out to other Burmese ethnicities, such as the Kachin people and their leadership, the Karen people. We want to reach out to the Shan. There are many Burmese Muslims who are not Rohingya, but also Burmese Christians who are also persecuted by the Burmese military and government. They are our natural allies, but the government there has been so hardworking in dividing the people and successful in dividing the people that it is hard to get this solidarity work. So we are working in interfaith context, we're working in Burmese community, we're working in the UN, we're working in Washington, D.C. We are trying to work everywhere we can, and the Muslim community especially is our important base. And we really hope that Muslims around United States can do more, can go to our website. And right now we're doing a campaign. If you go to www.burmataskforce.org, you will see our current campaign, which has to do with pressuring the nations of the UN. And we have phone numbers of every single nation state and every embassy in Washington, D.C. Call Pakistan, call Bosnia, call any of the connections you may have. Yesterday, my team in New York met with the ambassador of Kiribati, a tiny country in the middle of the South Pacific. We are meeting with every leader we can. Kiribati is sinking into the sea, and they have their own problems because of climate change. But we had a great meeting. I understand my colleagues had real interest, and we brought in an influential rabbi who's a colleague and an ally. We brought in the Chloe Breyer, who's the head of the Interfaith Center of New York. So we are showing our partnership, Muslims in solidarity with everyone, in partnership with everyone. So Burma Task Force can give an opportunity to really make a difference, and we really need the grassroots pressure. We need those phone calls. Some of these diplomats are not used to getting phone calls from the community. They need to hear from you. So this is what we're working on.
It does seem, as we make these phone calls and the grassroots, that part of this, though, is that for us, for citizens of the United States, more even perhaps than calling some of these embassies, to call our own congressmen, to call our own senators, because you need the support of the United States, which you don't quite have yet. It doesn't sound as if Senator Mitch McConnell is an ally. I'm curious, right here in Massachusetts, is our congressional delegation an ally to try and help end this genocide?
Well, I understand Mr. McGovern has signed on to some legislation in the past. I don't know the status of the current legislation. There's also several new resolutions, and it would be good to ask him about the resolution on behalf of the Reuters journalists who have been jailed for exposing mass graves of Rohingya. So if he's signed on to that yet, it's very new, so he probably hasn't. But we have seen a fair amount of support from Elizabeth Warren, from Markey, the senators. This has been a bipartisan issue in the past. We have seen Republicans just as much, almost as much, as Democrats support it. But there are certain interests who are blocking it. And we would like to know why. Mitch McConnell says that he's friends with Aung San Suu Kyi, and he believes that if we're asking for the military to have sanctions, that it will hurt her. That we don't buy that entirely, because that argument assumes that they are the same. In fact, the weaker the military gets, the better for Aung San Suu Kyi and for democracy. And that is supposed to be our priority as the United States, is to support democracy and its growth. So, you know, maybe one concern that some of our elected officials have is the growth of Chinese influence. China is not only blocking this action on this issue in the Security Council, they are investing heavily in Burma. They are also, in some cases, profiting from the land grabbing and the displacement, because people are pushed off their land, millions of acres, and then their developed pipelines go through and dams are built. So China has a lot to answer for, and I think that, again, there's a bipartisan concern about the power of China, but they use that as an excuse, because if U.S. says too much about human rights, then China will move in. Well, China's moved in already. It's too late.
Adam, we're going to let you get going so that you can talk to some people here and begin to tell them about what is happening and gather some support. Now, Asima, we have some time for some of your final perspective on this.
Right. Overall, thank you again for updating us on this issue. From what I understand, what you are saying is what we need from most people is to call your local congressmen and senators and visit the website. I believe it's www.burmamuslims.org.
It's changed to Burma Task Force.
burmataskforce.org. And when people can subscribe to it and get alerts of what they should talking points and what they should say to their Congress people. And what you're saying is it's not just one phone call. You'll get alerts with new messages and new situations that we need to call our congressmen. So this is not just one phone call and we're done. This is a continuous until we get some resolutions.
It really makes a difference. My colleague, Imam Abdullah, will be at this manning a table and also spreading the word. He is in this area and is a resource for the community. We can also help people organize programs. There are some Rohingya that we can even fly in if it's a large program, and they can speak about their experience. So we're very happy to work with anyone.
Well, thank you so much. And just full disclosure, I am also on the Burma Task Force. I'm the Massachusetts co-lead, and we are always looking for organizations and programs to talk about the situation, and especially on behalf of women who have suffered so much in that area. So thank you so much, and then we will be hopefully talking to Congressman McGovern, and we'll ask that question about the new resolution on the table.
The MetroWest Muslim Festival just about to get ready, and Asima, great job that you and your team have done from Enjoying Good to help put this festival together. Congressman Jim McGovern, who is here and he's going to be joining us now as well, is going to be helping to kick things off in just a moment. But we're glad to be able to spend a few minutes with him to talk about the issues of the day.
Right. Thank you so much, Congressman, for joining us. And I know I've been telling you we wanted you on our show for many episodes.
Happy to be here.
But you're so busy, and thank you so much for taking the time out today to just attend and show your support for the diversity and inclusion of Muslims in our society. But we decided, just before you came, we were interviewing Adam Carroll of the UN program director who is involved with the Rohingya Burma situation, and wanted to know some of the things that are going on with you on that situation. But why are you here to this event, and what was your reason to take time out of your day to show that you are somebody who would want to support this kind of activity?
Well, I'm here because I appreciate the diversity of our country and our community, to come to the MetroWest Muslim Festival, is a great thrill. It's a beautiful day, and I celebrate all that is on display here today, and so I wanted to come and show my solidarity, and I'm hoping to learn some things, but it's just nice to meet a lot of new people.
There is a vital Muslim community right here in Metro West, and a lot of them coming out today. Although Asima was telling us before, Congressman, she goes, well, it's scheduled to start at 3 o'clock. But the Muslim community, 3:30, 3:40, that's maybe the time that things really start to get going. I thought that was a great obseration.
The Muslim community is not unique in that. I mean,
that is very, very true. Right now in America, because I think that you just referenced it, what do you see is happening? A lot of what we talk about on Perspectives is unfortunately some of the incidents that are happening around the country. Do you see that having gotten worse? Is it about the same? We just had not too long ago 9/11 anniversary. From 9/11 to now, particularly the last couple of years, what do you see is happening in this country?
Well, look, I'll be very honest with you. I think the president has made things worse. He's promoted ignorance with regard to the Muslim community. I mean, he's reinforced false stereotypes. He campaigned on a Muslim ban. I think he has not only frightened a lot of people in the Muslim community, but I also think he's emboldened, people who have ignorant ideas about the Muslim population. What's on display here is love and understanding and respect, and all the things that we all should want to share, we should have in common. And yet some of the forces in Washington have sought to create fear and divide our communities, and I think that that's really unfortunate. And I think one of the advantages and one of the positive things about these festivals is that it helps tear down stereotypes and helps educate people about who this community is, and why we have so much in common.
As our congressman, of course, very concerned with what is happening right here in central Massachusetts, but I want to go back to what Asima said just a moment ago. We were hearing about the situation in Burma, described as a genocide by our last guest. You obviously are also involved in what is happening internationally.
Right.
I know that these types of issues, from even before you were a congressman and some of your involvement down in South America, but have you been looking at this situation in Burma? What can the United States do?
I have been. I co-chair the Human Rights Commission in Congress. And we've done a number of hearings on the situation in Burma, and not only how the Rohingya are treated, by the way, and that is a genocide, but a lot of ethnic minorities in Burma have been treated also very badly. We had great hope that with the elevation of Aung San Suu Kyi as the new leader in Burma, that who herself was under house arrest for many years by the military, that somehow we were going to see a new day where there was going to be respect for civil rights, and especially for the rights of ethnic minorities. She's turned out to be a great disappointment, in my opinion. And the military there rules that country brutally, and what they have done to the Rohingya, the mass murders, it is a human rights, it is a crime against humanity, it is genocide. And there are countless Rohingya who have fled and are now living in refugee camps in Bangladesh. And we need to make sure that we provide support for them. But the whole world should be outraged by what's happening. And so we're trying to figure out ways to put pressure on the military there to hold them to account, and to pressure them into stopping this violence against these people. But it really is very, very sad.
the whole world should be outraged. It's interesting, as our last guest, Adam Carroll, made a point of, though, it seems as if the worse that it gets, the more the world tends to shut down. It's counterintuitive. Right. Instead of our getting more involved, it becomes too overwhelming in a sense. Honestly, I think that our current administration, knows this lesson. I mean, the more that you sort of numb us to things, right, the more that we allow things to continue. What can we do as citizens that would actually aid?
Well, one, it would be nice to hear the president say something about the situation in Burma, and to talk about how terrible it is that an entire people are being wiped out as we gather. I mean, I think it is overwhelming in its magnitude, but we need to express outrage. I mean, it's important that our leaders express outrage. But I think to your point about sometimes people kind of shut down when things seem overwhelming. I get that, because I think we're so inundated with so much bad news, and when people talk about not a few people being murdered, but thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people being murdered and displaced, I think we sometimes lose the human ability to feel what that means. And so I think part of what world leaders need to do is help personalize this more, help talk about the individuals' stories, like who these people are. I mean, they're mothers and fathers and children that are being murdered and being displaced, and we have to start humanizing these conflicts, because if we all shut down, I mean, it's just not what's happening in Burma. Look what's happening in Syria. Look what's happening in I could go through a list of countries. We see hunger increasing globally because of increases in wars and violence and refugees. And I also think that we have to understand that, I mean, we're all the same, right? I mean, somebody asked me one time, like, why should I care about what happens halfway around the world? I said, because because of an accident of geography as to where you were born. I mean, you're born in a place where I can say whatever I want to you, and I'm not going to be arrested. I'm not going to be put in jail. I'm not going to disappear. I'm not going to be murdered because of it. But if I were born in Burma, if I were born in Russia, if I were born in Syria, if I were born in Turkey, it's a whole different ball game. And a few years ago, I tried to get into Sudan because there was a genocide that occurred in Sudan as well. The government wouldn't let me in, so I went to Chad and went to the border. I went to one of the refugee camps where a lot of Sudanese had fled. And at the time, they were taking testimony, the International Criminal Court was taking testimony to build a case against President Bashir of Sudan, to bring a case against him. And they were interviewing this woman in this tent who was speaking about how she had witnessed her husband and her 3 children murdered, right in front of her eyes. And she was describing it in this incredible, excruciating detail. And when it was all over with, I didn't know what to say. I just said, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important. And she says, if I didn't think it mattered, then I would end my life right now. Because, I have to believe that people care, because this is so horrible. And again, the International Criminal Court did bring a case against Bashir, but unfortunately, there's no follow through. And so we have to, we have to care about what's going on in the world. But we also have to be an example for the world. And I go back to the first question you asked about the treatment of Muslims in the United States. We get calls from families all over my district who get threats, who feel unsafe. And that increases when the president says things that are particularly divisive. I mean, we need to be an example by showing that, we are one. And I think more and more people, it doesn't matter what your political affiliation may be, you got to stand up to bigotry. And that's what it is. When somebody tries to say, Muslims are bad, I mean, that's bigotry, that is racism. There's no basis for that. It just seeks to divide this population. And we enough scapegoating. We need to come together.
Asima, I think that brings us back to enjoying good in the work that you're doing here by putting together the MetroWest Muslim Festival.
Right, and of course, Congressman, I agree with everything you have said, and I just wanted to take a moment to tell our viewers that Congressman McGovern had invited me in 2016 to the State of the Union to make that statement, that the Muslims are the fabric of the society too, along with many other minorities and cultures and ethnicities. But one thing I do want to say is that a lot of growing up, I always saw politicians, at least coming from a family who is immigrants. You know, a lot of the immigrant families have this impression that being a politician or being, involved in politics requires not so much working from your conscience. And when I was in the Capitol during the time of the State of the Union, one of the other Congress people stopped Congressman McGovern, stopped me and said, you know what, Jim, what I love about you is you always vote with your conscience. And I have to say that is so true. And I'm very proud that you are our congressman of this district. I wish more politicians did that, and I could say more about them like that. But you renewed my faith in politics and in getting involved in politics. And that's one of the reasons I got more involved, is because of things that I watched you do and what I heard other people say about you. Going back to what Adam wanted to know, just a quick before we finish, is there's a resolution, apparently a new resolution that is coming for the Rohingya people, asking for rights and asking, United States to consider this a genocide, officially consider this a genocide. What do you, if you would say a few words about?
No, I support that. It is. I mean, when there is a genocide, you have to call it for what it is. And I know people get worried about, what are the geopolitical impacts, or do we have to follow through? I mean, when people are being killed because of who they are en masse, you have to call it what it is, and it is a genocide. And we need to be stronger in our condemnation, and we need to make sure that they know that those who are responsible are going to be held to account. And I really believe that. And I recall very well when you came down for the State of the Union, she bumped into Obama, and I appreciate it. The other point I want to make too is that, the Muslim community, as you said, the Muslim community is an important and vital part of who we are as a country here in the United States. We need more people to run for office. We need more people to do that. And one of the things I've learned is that some of the, the people who have come here, their parents may have come here and they were born here in the United States, but their parents may have come from a country where the tradition of democracy is not so strong. Right. So there's kind of a fear about kind of sticking your neck out on the line, and maybe questioning things or raising your voice. We need more people to be involved in politics. We need more people. We need more people in the Muslim community to run for office. We need more people to speak up in the face of injustice and to help steer this country in the direction it should go in.
Well, the crowd is beginning to gather here at the MetroWest Muslim Festival. We've got about 30 seconds, I'm going to say, just enough time for you to give us your final perspective.
Right. Thank you so much, Congressman, for joining us again. And I think his presence, I hope, will really give our MetroWest and Worcester community the sense of some safety and understanding towards the Muslim community. And we hope to see you here next year, since we hope to do this annually.